What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Davey Sports Podcast. This is episode 168. Recording this on the of late evening of Thursday, January 2nd, 2025. So you guys will almost certainly be listening to this on Friday, January 3rd. Happy New Year, everybody. This is my first podcast of 2025, of course. There were no San Diego State games since I last recorded on Saturday, and the Padres have not made any transactions since then, as of the time of this recording. But I am going to come on here for a quick episode because I want to talk about the NFL games with postseason implications and the college football playoff quarterfinals that happened. So we'll start with the NFL games. So this won't take very long. Starting Indianapolis Colts, they were a long shot to get in anyways. They need a lot of things to happen, but to go out that way, to give up 45 points, the worst offense, the worst team in the league, arguably in the New York Giants with your season on the line, that's pathetic. Like, I thought Chris Ballard was doing a good job with that roster his first couple years there. I thought Shane Steichen was a good head coaching hire, but Indianapolis, they got a lot of self-reflecting to do, and now there's a lot of questions about them. I think my biggest whiff by far was picking them to make the postseason before the year. I had a big whiff there. So interesting to see where Indianapolis goes from there. Moving on to other things with teams that are actually going to the playoffs or have a chance to go to the playoffs. We'll start with Minnesota Vikings held on to beat Green Bay. So they are playing for the NFC North title and the 1 seed in the NFC when they take on the Detroit Lions on Sunday Night Football in Detroit. I'll just say this: winner of that game will get a bye and need to win 2 home games to get to the Super Bowl. And the way those two teams have pretty much rolled along this year, Detroit's overcome some injuries on defense, and it sounds like they're going to get some linebackers back, if not for Week 18 for the playoffs. So that's a pretty big game Sunday night because I absolutely see whoever wins that game gets the 1 seed, winning 2 home games and getting to the Super Bowl that way. So I think that's a really big game Sunday night between Minnesota and Detroit. Um, talk about what happened this past Sunday night. The Washington Commanders beat the Atlanta Falcons in overtime, 30-24. Heck of a game. They're going to the playoffs for the first time since 2020. This is the first time they're going to the playoffs with the Commanders branding, of course, because in 2020 they had the temporary placeholder branding of Washington football team. So happy for them. And Jaden Daniels is a beast. Seems like a really great kid too, and just an incredibly talented young quarterback. McLaurin's obviously one of the best receivers in the game, and it's great to see him this year, what he's doing, having a real quarterback. Zach Ertz, he's not dominant like he was in Philly, but he can still play. And Dan Quinn, I know I'm biased towards him because one of my good friends is his nephew. But Dan Quinn and Adam Peters have totally changed the culture there in Washington. Year one of a rebuild with this new regime, and they're going to the playoffs. That's remarkable. I mean, I just couldn't be happier too for that fan base, because we know in San Diego what it's like to suffer through bad owners, and they finally get rid of Dan Snyder, and look at them now. So since Josh Harris bought the team in July of 2023, that's too late to, make any serious changes for the 23 season. So last year was kind of just a transition year for them. This is really the first year with the new ownership doing it. They're establishing themselves. So it's really, I'm so happy for Washington. And, Maddie and I have talked about last time and previous times about why we want a team back in San Diego so bad. And we'll talk more about this later. But I just want to point this out, why the Commanders are a great example of how ownership just makes such a big difference in terms of fans showing up to games, being invested in the team, and, getting a stadium built in the region. Because Dan Snyder had been trying to move the team back into the district, or at least to a different suburb of DC for a new stadium. Nothing got through. The fan, and the way he mismanaged the team, the fans started to be driven away. And you heard that crowd on Sunday night. The fans are back there in DC. They're behind the team again. And look, now that he's gone, Congress pushes through a resolution to potentially build a new stadium at the old RFK site in the district. So look at that, new ownership. Nobody wanted to do favors for Dan Snyder. Couldn't work with Dan Snyder. I've said the same thing about San Diego here, how either nobody wanted to or couldn't work with Dean Spanos for obvious reasons. It's kind of the same thing, looks like in the DC area with Dan Snyder, because look at that. He's gone for a year and Congress pushes through something that could potentially give the team a new stadium at the RFK site. And the fans are back and invested again. Because they have been driven away by Snyder, the way fans here were driven away by Spanos. So I think Washington is just a great example of how ownership, does so much for the lack of success for a team, the fans being driven away, and difficulties in getting a new stadium. I think all of that can be can happen because of a bad owner. And once you get rid of him, everything can change. And Washington's kind of showing that to us. So love to see that. For those reasons, so happy for the fans. And it's kind of proving to me like, hey, give us some new ownership here in San Diego, new investors, new ownership, and we can get a stadium, we can get a team back. So I just wanted to throw that out there as well, because I always am looking for a reason to bring that up. Again, Maddie and I will go into much more detail about this in an episode coming up very soon. So I just wanted to say that real quick. That's really all I got on the NFL is those games, because a lot of the action that happened on Christmas Day, the 26th and the 28th. 28th was Saturday, so we already talked about a lot of that. The only other thing I can say is that the 2.5 more wins from other teams that the Rams needed to clinch the NFC West. They got, so mathematically LA wins the NFC West. They're actually resting at least Stafford on Sunday, which I don't really get, because if they lose and Tampa Bay wins, they could drop to the 4th seed and have to play Minnesota or Detroit. But I don't know. I guess they figured Stafford's getting up there in age. They want to protect him for the playoffs. I don't know what they're doing with other starters. I just saw that with Stafford. So that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But hey, I mean, Sean McVay knows a lot more than I do. So, we'll see how that turns out. The only things I said, everything that needed to be said in the NFL. Now we're going to go on to these quarterfinal games. Penn State, they got the job done. They, tried to let Boise State back into that game, dominated early, made a couple of mistakes to keep Boise State in it. It was close into the third quarter, but then Penn State, showed their ability, showed their talent, and ended up winning 31-14. They're going to the semifinals. They managed to bottle up Ashton Genty. He only got 3.5 yards to carry, but that's not a knock on him. I know some people are going to be like, well, he actually had to play a non-Male West team and he got stuffed. I mean, come on. I mean, if you watch that game, there were dudes on him like as soon as he got the ball, and he had to work hard just to like get 3 or 4 yards on some of these carries. And let's not forget, he had 192 yards and 3 touchdowns against Oregon, the second game of the season. So yeah, Genty's legit. He just his offensive line and team were just overwhelmed by Penn State, but he's absolutely legit. He had a great season. And then Penn State, I mean, 216 rushing yards. They got 2 good running backs. It'll be really interesting to see if they can keep that up in the semifinal. I'm going to talk about who they're going to be playing in that semifinal next. I'm going through these games in chronological order of what they happened. And so that brings us next to the Texas and Arizona State game. Wow, what a game this was. Arizona State had a big comeback in the fourth quarter. They're on 16. They got a touchdown, 2-point conversion, interception, another touchdown, another 2-point conversion to tie it, and really should have been in position to win the game at the end of regulation. I don't know how that wasn't targeting on Texas. I've seen that play call target over and over again. I don't know if it was like one of those things where like they weren't going to eliminate an SEC team on a targeting call or what, but that was bad. That was a bad call. And then in overtime, I just don't know why they blitzed on 4th and 13 when they were up 7 and they had in the first overtime, they had a 4th and 13 on Texas possession. I don't know why they brought pressure. They brought like 5-6 guys on that 4th and 13. It's like it's 4th and 13 and keep everything in front of you. Like, I don't understand that defensive play call. So that's what really cost them. That was brutal. But still a remarkable season for Arizona State. Remember, this team was picked last in the Big 12 preseason, and they came very close to winning, arguably should have won this quarterfinal game against Texas. So hats off to them. Dillingham's not going anywhere, and he's going to have that program in the mix for years to come. I think he's a great coach, did an unbelievable job with this team. Um, then we're gonna go on to the Rose Bowl quarterfinal between Ohio State and Oregon. Just typical Oregon, man. You think that's their year? They have all these things going for them. 13-0, number one seed. They're playing in Pasadena, where they've played and won plenty of games in their history. Familiar setting. Playing an Ohio State team they beat in the regular season, and they go out there and get their ass kicked. I mean, that's just typical Oregon. But I will say that as far as Ohio State goes, I swear it, man. Those For all the criticism that people giving Ryan Day, myself included, those kids in that locker room must love him and like be going all out to keep his job, like winning these games. Because what another impressive performance from Ohio State, just came out firing. Will Howard 319 yards, 3 touchdowns. They ran for 181 yards. And Oregon could do nothing on the ground against Ohio State. Totally one dimensional. So yeah, hats off to them. I mean, they are. I have been saying that they probably are the most talented team in college football, and they kind of showed it against Oregon. Really interested to see what happens in these last two rounds. I do think they're going to beat Texas, so that'll be interesting. And then to the game that got moved, the Sugar Bowl, which got moved to Thursday because of the terrible thing that happened in New Orleans on Wednesday morning. Notre Dame and Georgia, and man, what a I'm so impressed by Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame. And I've been far from a Notre Dame guy over the course of however many years I've watched college football. Seems like there's a little bit of arrogance based off their old national championships, and the whole think they're better than everybody, won't join a conference, and the Notre Dame on NBC thing feels like kind of shoved in our face. Always get overrated in preseason polls, or almost always get overrated in preseason polls. But this team, I can get behind and respect, and you know applaud them, because I think Marcus Freeman's a legit coach. He's awesome. It's like, how can you possibly dislike that guy? Riley Leonard, heard his post game interview, just seems like a really nice kid. And well, congratulations, Notre Dame. You got your biggest win since the Soviet Union dissolved. Winning this game. Obviously, they had the never won a BCS or New Year's Six game before today, which obviously they did now. And most of all, I was just happy to see Georgia lose, because they are becoming increasingly unlikable as the years go on. I mean, they got a guy getting arrested every other week for drinking and driving or something else, and Kirby Smart just turns a blind eye to it all, sweeps under the rug, acts like there's nothing wrong, there's no problem in that program, and he just complains about everything. And he does the whole fake underdog thing to try and motivate his team, which just is really annoying. He's become very unlikable. Georgia's become very unlikable. So it was nice to see them lose. And just the SEC in general, seeing them go down. Because this whole SEC propaganda that ESPN tries to shove down our throats, acting like SEC is the greatest, and the SEC, bow down to the SEC. That gets really old after a while. So it's great to see the SEC get humbled a little bit. To All in all, just really impressive for Notre Dame too. The defensive effort was unbelievable by them today. And I'm sorry, not Riley. Marcus Freeman just totally had Kirby Smart's number today. I mean, the whole sprint, the punt team off the field, put the offense out there, get them to jump off sides for the first down. Yeah, like I said, Marcus Freeman, how can you do anything but like the guy? Yeah, congratulations, Notre Dame. Really interested to see Notre Dame and Penn State. I'll probably lean Penn State, because I've been kind of impressed with them ever since the close loss to Oregon in the Big Ten championship, like I talked about. So I'll lean Penn State. Wouldn't shock me if Notre Dame won. Either way, a program that's been criticized for not winning the big one is going to be in the national championship game. So that's interesting to see. It's one of the great things about this new playoff. And I know some people are going to be like, well, all the teams with the bye lost. So we're going to start hearing the same crap we heard in baseball before this year, when 3 of the 4 teams with the bye made the LCS. we're gonna hear the same thing like, "Oh, the bye's actually bad for you." No, 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 no. It's not. It's dumb when they say it in baseball. It's dumb here too. And here's why it's dumb. Because the dumb thing is the seeding. Boise State and Arizona State should not have had that high of seeds to get buys. Like they were not better teams throughout the season than Texas and Penn State. Yet both those teams were right there. Boise State was down 3 in the third quarter. Arizona State arguably should have won. Yet they were right there. And then, like I said, Ohio State is probably the most talented team in the country. They're much better than 8 seed for crying out loud. So Oregon played arguably the most talented team in the country, which, that shouldn't be the case in a quarterfinal matchup. Like I said, they got to change the seeding next year so you don't give the conference champions the automatic bye. It's fine to have the conference champions automatically get in, but don't give them the bye. Rank the teams 1 through 4. Give those 4 the bye. So got to fix that next year. That's the real problem. Not having the bye is bad. And then, Georgia just got beat. I mean, Georgia, it was not the same Georgia team. I mean, they didn't have their starting quarterback today against Notre Dame. They got bailed out by the refs, I think, against Georgia Tech in that game. So, absolutely, like those teams they just got beat, man. And the seeding is the problem, not having the bye. Like this whole, oh, the bye is bad for you thing in sports. Like, oh, that's so annoying. I guarantee you if Kansas City, Detroit, or Minnesota loses in the divisional, we're going to hear the same crap coming from football fans, from NFL fans too. I mean, it's like a team can never just lose that's favored or the higher seed. There always has to be a reason for it. They can't just get beat. That bothers me, but I'm done talking. I'm done with that. So I got nothing else. Just wanted to talk about the rest of the NFL games from week 17 and the college football playoff. And I guess I could go into the week 18 real quick in the NFL. Cincinnati, they're still alive, but I don't know. At Pittsburgh, dealing with some injuries. The Steelers, they want to right the ship a little bit going into the playoffs, and they still have technically they have a chance. Actually, they'll know by kickoff if they do or not, and they probably won't because Baltimore will probably destroy Cleveland. But still, Pittsburgh will want to go into the playoffs, righting the ship a little bit. They don't want to limp into the playoffs the way they played the last 3 weeks. They want to, get back on track going into the playoffs. So I expect them to play hard, especially against a hated rival at home. So I don't think Cincinnati wins anyways. So I think they're out, but I think they'd be in trouble anyways because, Kansas City's not playing their starters against Denver. And Denver should have beat the Chiefs at Arrowhead even earlier in the year. Remember, the field goal got blocked at the end of the game. So I absolutely expect Denver to win and, barely hang on to a playoff spot. The Jets are terrible, so Miami will probably win, but I don't think Miami will get all the results they need. So you can forget about that. I talked about the Detroit and Minnesota for the NFC North. I think everything else is pretty meaningless. So just looking at this, you have the NFC South. I just don't see Tampa Bay losing to a depleted Saints team at home. So they'll probably win and get the division title. And then Atlanta would need that to beat Carolina at home, which they probably will in all honesty. But I don't think I can't see Tampa Bay losing at home to New Orleans. So I've got to figure Tampa Bay will be the NFC South champion. That's all I got for tonight, guys. Thanks for listening. I know it was kind of a shorter episode tonight, but I didn't have as much to say as usual. So thanks for listening, fellas. Until the next time.